We've only got 14 signed in. If we can get a couple more signed in, we'll be able to get started. At 19. What are we showing tonight? 20. Okay. Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask everybody if they could please find their seats and ask if anybody has electronic devices, could they please check them and turn them to silent? Bruce? Thank you. And if you please all rise for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please remain standing for the singing of O Canada. Councillor Burrows.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think we found ourselves a new starter. So moving to the adoption of the agenda, I'll ask if there are any additions or changes in order to the agenda. Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In deference to my colleague, Mayor Redekop, I know he wants to speak on the closed session item. I'm hoping that he gets here by the time the closed session item is discussed. But in the event that he is not here, if that particular item could be pushed back.
The closed session is at the end.
Okay, that's fine then.
Okay. Okay, seeing none other, I'll ask for a mover to the agenda. Councillor McGregor, Councillor Bentley.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On a point of order, included in this agenda is a presentation about Pelham's business and items that are within the jurisdiction of the town, as well as an item regarding the budget approval or approval of debentures from last year from this council. So I think this is these items are for reconsideration and outside of jurisdiction. The procedure bylaw states that the regional chair shall declare that if there's an item that is contrary to the rules of procedure or which are beyond the jurisdiction of council, that it's your duty to decline to put to vote. So I would ask you to rule on this, on whether these items are beyond the jurisdiction of the region and whether they're reconsideration.
I'm going to turn to the clerk for the reconsideration question.
Through the chair, in discussions with finance staff as well as legal staff, it's the view that this is not a reconsideration. The motion that is coming from the audit committee is about making requests of the town of Pelham and local municipalities. It's not suggesting that council overturn its previous decision on the issuance of debt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm specifically speaking about the presentation that we have this evening, which is about that. and it's asking council to reconsider that issuance, and also ask going into the town's jurisdiction.
Well, we haven't heard the presentation yet, so I'll let the presentation stand. And with regard to speaking to things that are beyond our jurisdiction, we do often. I don't know if you saw the demonstrators in the parking lot today about BDS, so I'm going to rule that it's in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect regarding BDS, this council did decide that it was within our jurisdiction. I'd like to challenge your ruling on this jurisdictional issue and reconsideration issue. And ask for a vote.
I haven't made any ruling, so.
You just ruled, I understood.
I just said that we typically do hear things that are beyond our jurisdiction, so I'm really not changing anything. I'm not making a ruling. This is no different than any other business that we take care of.
Mr. Chair, that is your ruling, and I challenge that ruling.
I haven't done anything, so I don't have anything to challenge.
I'm challenging that ruling, Mr. Chair. You have just said that it is within the jurisdiction of the region and that it's not reconsideration, and I challenge that.
No, what I've said is, and you got that wrong, what I said is we often talk about things that are outside our jurisdiction, and that's just what we have done in the past.
So, Mr. Chair, is this, or is I'm asking you for a ruling and you're not providing one.
There's nothing to rule on.
Mr. Chair, I would ask for a rule, a calling against that ruling that there's nothing to rule on. I think there is something to rule on, Mr. Chair, and I would ask that we put it to a vote of members that these items are beyond the jurisdiction of the region and reconsideration.
No, you heard from the clerk that it's not reconsideration. I have to take that advice. And in terms of outside our jurisdiction, we do it all the time. I'm going to call the vote on the agenda as we've had it moved and seconded, as presented.
Mr.
All
Chair,
those in favor?
as a point of privilege, it is my privilege to
It's
call
not a point
for-
of privilege. It's not a point of privilege. I do not accept your point of privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Keep them high.
Can we have a recorded vote?
Recorded vote on the is requested. Please use the electronic system. On adopting the agenda.
Well, I understand that, but I have to stand and support my colleague. Clearly, there's some.
Chair, point of order, if I may, with all due respect, Councillor Marshall. The vote was called and a recorded vote was requested. That doesn't mean you get to stand up and everyone can speak to it again.
Well, I
So
was
I'd ask-
recognized, and I thank the chair for recognition. I just
So
support
I'd
it.
ask that you rule on my point of order then.
Yeah, there is nothing out of order, Councillor Marshall. I need to continue with the
Can
vote.
I challenge that, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair?
I'm not sure what to challenge.
Well, I don't know. You turn to the clerk, and the clerk does not make decisions. The chair does. And you made a decision, one, that it's not a reintroduction, which would require 2/3 of the members of this council in order to hear it. So you've ruled that it is not. That being the case, you've been challenged that ruling is flawed. So I think you're compelled to bring it to a vote, but you're the chair.
I disagree. I disagree, and I stand by the fact that we have no business with respect to reconsideration on the agenda tonight. And the clerk has offered her opinion, and I stand by it. Call the question. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The agenda is approved. That's the adopted agenda.
Okay, can we start again? I'm not sure what happened there. It's a 10-second timer, not a 20, so you got to make your mind up a little quicker. Go ahead.
The vote is open.
And that carries. Thank you. So moving on, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Disclosures, Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to declare an indirect pecuniary interest in matters regarding development charges. Those are items 4.1 and 5.1 in the Corporate Services Committee, as those policies affect a family business.
Thank you, Councillor. And thank you for being clear on the items. Any others? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please let that be noted. In terms of presentations, there are none tonight. In terms of my remarks, I have a couple of remarks, and then there is actually a memorandum that's moving forward, so I'll just go through the remarks. We will be having a Code of Conduct Council meeting on July the 6th. So on July the 6th, our special council meeting will be considering the Code of Conduct documents proposed by the Procedural Bylaw Committee. During the consideration of those documents, a motion and or bylaw may be presented that at that meeting to amend the procedural bylaw to adopt the new Code of Conduct for Council. So that's on July the 6th. Hopefully we get good attendance there because it is an important issue and we've had a lot of discussion on it, and it's time to weigh in on your input on the Code of Conduct. Earlier this week, I was pleased to attend the LEAP graduation. This is for young parents who have not completed high school but have an opportunity through this program to get their grade 12 certificate and move on. It's a very moving experience if you haven't been part of it. It takes place at Amici's, and I can tell you there's a lot of families there, there's a lot of grandparents there, there's a lot of babies there, which are part of the reason why these folks are there in the first place. So it's a great event, and a lot of proud parents in achieving their grade 12 equivalent. Today I was out in West Lincoln, and we were celebrating the opening of what is a community parking lot. There was a community effort that included the church, the region, the city, and EMS, all in one, doing something together, pulling together to use a piece of land for parking now that Highway 20 is becoming busier and traffic is being prohibited on the highway. So it was a great collaboration to be celebrated. As you know, this weekend is Canada Day, and I'll be attending events in Grimsby, West Lincoln, Welland, Port Colborne, Fort Erie, and Thorold. It's going to be a busy day, let me tell you. I still got a few minutes, I could fit that in. Wishing all Niagara residents a happy Canada Day for our 150th birthday. I also want to mention that I was at the Niagara Falls City Council to reaffirm the region's position on supporting the city and stopping the casino RFQ process. There was a special meeting at Niagara Falls Council that I attended to offer our support as in our resolution, and today you'll see a resolution coming forward from the city to be supported here by us, and this is the need to save 1,400 jobs in our region. So they are my remarks, Madam Clerk, and I will just, before we move to the motion, I'm going to ask our CAO to introduce a new staff member that's with us tonight. Carmen?
Thank you, Chair and members of Council. I'd like to introduce a new staff member, part of our corporate leadership team, Mache. Mache, can you stand up? Mache has an extensive educational background and work experience and will be our Director of Internal Controls and Organizational Performance. He has a Bachelor of Arts with honors from the University of Toronto. He is a certified management accountant. He's a certified internal auditor. He has certification in risk management assurance, and he's actively pursuing his certification as a fraud examiner. He has extensive private and public experience. He comes to us from Loblaws, where he had senior duties in internal audit, and most recently, we took him from Brewers Retail, where he was the senior manager of internal audit, overseeing 450 stores with an extensive team. Mache has extensive experience in internal auditing, has a vast amount of both private and public sector experience. We welcome him to the team, He's actively now recruiting, and you may have seen the postings of internal auditors, procurement compliance auditor, and a senior project management specialist. Welcome, Ache.
Welcome. Thank you, Carmen. And at this time, I'll turn to Councillor Volpatti for a memorandum from myself on the casino RFP.
Actually, I have a motion,
Thank you.
Chair. Moved by me and seconded by Councillor Nunziata, that memorandum ACS 002-2017, being a memorandum from Helen Caslin, Regional Chair, dated June 29, 2017, respecting Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation's RFP be received, that the June 22nd, 2017 Niagara Falls resolution calling for all available legal avenues to cause the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation to bring an end to the ongoing flawed request for quotation process be endorsed, that the Niagara region assist the City of Niagara Falls to ensure local jobs and significant economic development opportunities are protected, and that memorandum ACS 002-2017 be circulated to Niagara's MPPs for their support.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions or comments?
Just to add to that, that when, and I was on that council in Niagara Falls, I believe in 1996, we welcomed the casino to the town. It was for jobs, it was for economic development, it was not to make money for the province. I don't think that was ever in the whole concept. And right now, that's the only reason they want to make these changes, to make money for the province.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Seeing no further speakers, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, can we back up and record the vote on that? Please let it be known when it's open.
The vote is open.
Councillor Rigby, is that recorded correctly? Would you like it to? Yes. Thank you very much. Please let that be noted. Okay. Moving to delegations, we have one delegation tonight, and I'll invite Mr. Rainer Hummel, resident of the town of Niagara Lake, to delegate on regional taxpayer affordability guidelines. Minute item as noted.
Mr. Chair.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair. I have a point of order.
What's out of order?
And I'm not trying to offend Mr. Hummel. What's out of order is your earlier non-ruling. It says in the procedure bylaw 17.2, when a member desires to call attention to a deviation or departure from the rules of procedure, a member shall ask leave of the chair to raise a point of order, and after leave is granted, the member shall state the point of order to the chair, and the point of order shall immediately be decided by the chair. It shall be the duty of the chair to decide all points of privilege and order when called upon to do so. So, Mr. Chair, it's your duty to decide the point of order.
There was no deviation from procedure.
In the case of an immediate appeal by a member from a decision of the chair on a point of order, practice, or procedure, such member shall state the grounds for the appeal, and such appeal must be decided without debate by the concurring votes of the majority of members present on shall the ruling of the chair be sustained.
Your first words were when there is a deviation, and I'm saying there was no deviation.
In the case of immediate appeal by a member of a decision of the chair, your decision is that there's no deviation, Mr. Chair. It is your duty, according to the bylaw, that you make a ruling. You're abdicating
I'll ask the
your
clerk
duty.
for advice.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Hummel. apologize.
So what the clerk has advised me is that although I've said there's no deviation, Councillor Augustine is suggesting that there is a deviation to the process. I'm saying there's not. The presentation that's before us today was received by the clerk in the appropriate time. It was received in the appropriate manner. I don't see anything out of order with the fact that the presenter is here today to present. He is not using a substitute. His materials are consistent with what he told us he was going to be presenting. So in that manner, I don't see anything that would preclude this presenter from presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's your ruling. And I stated that it was because it's beyond our jurisdiction and it's something that's already decided and will require reconsideration that I challenge your ruling, and I would ask that we vote on that as an assembly.
Point of order, Chair, if I may.
Yes.
A councillor can't just get up and ask you a question, say, I disagree with what you said, and I call a point of order. It is in order. It is in the jurisdiction. In fact, there's agenda item 19.5, Bill 2017-55 is a bylaw to authorize borrowing over $12 million for the construction of the Town of Pelham Community Center. The presenter is speaking about what happened in the minutes of audit. It's completely appropriate. And I'm actually concerned why the member opposite is so bent on blocking the public from speaking. It is a concern. It's not out of order.
I'm ruling it's not out of order. And
okay. And I'd like a vote on that, Mr. Chair. I challenge that ruling.
let's take a pause. Councillor, can you repeat again, because I'm reading 17.2. It suggests when a member desires to call attention to a deviation or departure from the rules of procedure. What is deviated?
Mr. Chair, I gave you an email this morning to state that I would be raising this issue, so you know about it. I stated in my email, and I stated earlier today at the start of the meeting, that this is a jurisdictional issue. So it's beyond the jurisdiction of the region to deal with the matters that this presenter is going to be speaking about, and many of the matters that were talked about in the audit committee. Similarly, it's a matter of reconsideration because council already approved the debenture in June of 2016. That's what I'm suggesting, Mr. Chair, that it's your job as chair, it's your duty to decide all points of privilege in order. I'm raising now a point of order that you didn't do that. And what I'm suggesting, Mr. Chair, is that this is the same thing, beyond the jurisdiction of the region and a reconsideration. You've stated it isn't, and I think the next course is 17.4, which is an appeal to members.
You have no point of order. There is nothing out of order. There is no deviation from the accepted process.
Mr. Chair, then my point of order is that ruling it needs to be challenged as well. There is something out of order. That's the essence of what I'm doing. I'm not trying to play games, Mr. Chair. I would like a vote on whether this should be on our agenda or not in terms of the jurisdiction of the region and reconsideration.
Councillor, all the process has been followed. I'm not going to call a question. I'm going to ask you to take your seat so that we can hear the delegation.
I don't know. I hope somebody else challenges that ruling, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hummel, please continue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Opportunity to present tonight. The reason I'm here tonight is a situation with respect to the town of Pelham and what I'm calling a cause for concern. Give you a quick background. My name is Reiner Hummel. I'm the principal of Hummel Properties. We're a land development company operating for 30 years now in the Niagara region. We operate in Kitchener in the United States and in Mexico as well. We do industrial, commercial, and residential development. I'm also the CEO of Telecom Datvox, which is a computer networking company that I started 35 years ago, and we currently have 105 employees. I'm a substantial property owner. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Pardon me. I'm also a substantial property owner in the Niagara region, Niagara Lake, and specifically in Font Hill. I'm one of the larger owners in the East Font Hill Secondary Plan. I have a reasonable knowledge of planning and the development process. I have a number of concerns in Font Hill, but given the time frame involved here, I have 3 specific ones I'd like to bring to this council's attention. The primary one is a potentially illegal municipal credit scheme. Specifically, it states, the Act states that DC charges cannot be used to purchase parkland. And I believe that is in fact what the town of Pelham did. They purchased parkland with DC charge credits and potentially even purchased areas for roads. Developers give towns parkland. We give you the land for roads, we build those roads, we turn them over to you. I've never, well, not never, but it is extremely rare for a town to go out, buy the land, build the roads, buy the parkland when you get it for nothing from us. It doesn't make sense to me. I've not seen this before. There's also, second item, a questionable land purchase. And what it looks like to me is a very questionable land purchase from a specific developer overpaying dramatically for a piece of land, which looks to me nothing more than a backdoor way of bonusing a developer. Finally, an unfunded plan for the community center. The $36 million debenture, I believe the numbers are dramatically inflated and cannot be supported by the information provided. So DC credits, basically, and you all know what they are, you've all approved them. It's an amount of money that the development community pays per unit, and it is used specifically for very specific things. There's accounts set up. Sidewalks, X dollars goes to sidewalks, Y dollars goes to sewers. So these are specific accounts where this money needs to be deposited. We depend, the development community depends on these funds to be there. The taxpayer depends on these funds to be there in order that the taxpayer is not burdened with the cost of land development. That's why they were created. When those funds are misdirected or redirected, not misdirected, redirected for other purchases, potentially purchases contrary to the Act, that money is not available in those accounts to provide those services it's supposed to be there for. What you have, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, is an unfunded liability. You have a liability on the books because these sewers have to be built, the sidewalks have to be built, and the money's been spent someplace else. So this is a serious concern of mine, and to me, it almost seems like a scheme. It must have been at some point become evident to the town of Pelham because, I mean, these charges, these development charges were offered to me for sale. And when it was first happened, I couldn't believe it. I said, you're selling what? And it was a developer who had massive amounts of development charges. And he told me, he said, we have far more than we can ever use. And not only do you get DCs in this deal, we sell them to you at a 5% discount. And it includes your park fees and it includes your security deposits, which once again, in my 30 years in this business, I've never heard of such a thing. That you can buy development charges on the open market at a discount, and they include parks, and they include security deposits. It's something that absolutely doesn't make any sense to me. So it brings us to some of the unaddressed concerns. If what I understand correctly from the mayor, we are being told that these credits that were being sold were only DC charge credits, but they're not. When it was offered to me, it included security deposit, it included parks fees. I'd never heard of such a thing. The CAO of the community states that the credits purchased were purchased with cash on hand. If you look at Pelham's financial statements, they had less than $500,000 in the bank. How do you pay? And there was over $3 million in these development charge credits. It appears to me that when these were purchased back, and the community obviously purchased these credits back because somebody must have told them, you can't do this. So in buying these credits back, they didn't have cash on hand. They came to you and told you they're borrowing money to buy something, to build a community center, and then use those funds to cover the unfunded liability that they had created prior, and I don't think they told you about that. I have a problem with that. If you're going to borrow money, you have to tell people what you're borrowing it for. Again, there's disrespect to the unfunded liability not being reflected on the financial statements of 2016. If these development charge credits had to be bought back, there had to be a liability on the books at some point in time. If the money's not in the account and the money has to be put there, you've got a liability and it's not reflected in their financial statements. So again, the people around this table made a decision to allow someone to borrow, and I don't think you had the right information in order to be able to do that. We get to the questionable land purchase. And I'm going to go through a couple of transactions here, and I know these transactions because they happen to be my properties. So this is the deal. So 59 Port Robinson Road is a property I bought in 2014, March, which happens to be the same time that the original deal was created to purchase this parkland. When the town created this deal to purchase parkland from the developer, I bought 59 Port Robinson Road for $140,000 an acre, included a large 4-bedroom, very luxurious home. I bought 107 Port Robinson Road for $164,000 an acre. Again, a 4-bedroom home in the property on a municipal street with municipal services. 125 Port Robinson Road, an old farmhouse on the property, full municipal services, $146 an acre. 121, $275 an acre. 131 Port Robinson Road, we bought just over 6 months ago. 6 months ago, and we paid $152,000 an acre. The town of Pelham bought 3+ acres in the middle of nowhere with no services, with nothing on it, with no road to get there, and they paid $928,000 an acre. That's more than any piece of property has ever been sold for in the regional municipality of Niagara. And somewhere that money had to come from something, and it was created, I'm going to use this term, in the basement, by printing development charge credits, printing your currency, buying something with currency you printed in the basement and handed over to a developer who then in turn converted that to cash by selling them to developers and builders like myself. And there were builders and developers who did buy these. Something simply doesn't smell right with that. And that's what gets to the next slide. The timing here stinks. So March 2014, the town agrees to buy a parcel of land from a developer. He didn't own the land. So a piece of property was bought from somebody who doesn't even own it. I can see maybe that can happen. May 29th, 2015, just over a year later, 8 acres was purchased by the developer for $1.8 million. 8 acres, $1.8 million. Brilliant guy, he financed it 100%. Good for him, no money down. Within a few days, he sold half that parcel of land to the town of Pelham for almost $3.5 million. I want to know how a transaction like that can happen. How does a piece of property increase in value, a piece of property with no services, no roads, in the middle of nowhere, increase in value to that extent? In my career, it's absolutely unheard of. And I don't know that too many people have ever seen a transaction quite like that. So we get, this is a process, quite frankly, that somebody sells a piece of land they don't own, they buy it a year later, they pay for it, they sell it the next day to a public authority using taxpayers' money that I believe was then borrowed through this council to pay for this piece of property, which was paid for with development charges created in the basement. It's either, I'm going to say this carefully, it's either the most corrupted process I've ever seen, or it's the stupidest process I've ever seen. But I don't see anything intelligent in any of this. Final item, item number 3, the $36 million debenture for the community center. And this is one of the first things that struck me when I first came across some of these budget items and how this was sold to this regional council as realistic debt. There's $12 million in the community center budget that's supposed to be coming from development charges. That's my community, that's the development community. We're the ones who pay that, and we're good with paying that. We build good communities because of it. Town of Pelham has $1,000 in its Development Charges Act for indoor community facilities. Does anybody know what happens when you divide 1,000 into 12 million? 12,000. You have to build 12,000 houses in Pelham. You have to build the city of Welland in Pelham in order to get to 12,000 houses to raise $12 million. Folks, I'm sorry, but even in the most optimistic projections, by 2041, the town of Pelham can build 3,000 plus houses, 3,300 houses. That's $3 million, folks. We're $9 million short of this mythical budget. So either the number's wrong, or there's an increase coming in development charges that has not been publicly vetted, has never been agreed to by anyone. The development community doesn't know about this. Regardless, you've approved a large amount of borrowing. You're going to approve an additional amount of borrowing tonight, and I believe, based on the numbers that I see, there is a significant shortfall of $9 million right there out of the $36 million. There's another question with respect to some of the items in that list, including land value that the town of Pelham claims to be $15 million. So if we look at the town of Pelham and its current debt levels, at the moment, the town of Pelham has about $21 million in debt. Tonight, I believe you're going to be approving another $12 million, which will bring the town of Pelham to almost $2,000 per capita, or double any other debt of any other community in the region. And I believe that this is absolutely unsustainable, especially if you factor in the fact that if these numbers are wrong, if there's $9 million missing out of these development charges, they have to come back for another $9 million later.
Yeah, Mr. Hummel,
Yeah.
could you please summarize?
Okay. So the bottom line is, I'm asking this council, the audit committee, to keep digging into this. There's something not right here. And to paraphrase, or to give you an analogy, it's like the errant son comes to his father and says, Dad, I need to borrow money to go to school. I need you to co-sign my loan. Dad co-signs the loan. Son takes the money, pays off old gambling debts. Well, you still have to pay for your school. Somebody's got to come out with the money for school. And in the meantime, son forgot to tell dad about the books, the housing, and the food. So now more money has to be borrowed. The entire family has been put at risk because money was supposed to be borrowed for one thing, and it was used, in my opinion, for something completely different. I hope we take a closer look at this before more debt gets accumulated in Pelham. I don't think the Pelham taxpayers can manage this level of debt, especially when there's so many unanswered questions about additional debt that still needs to be piled on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hummel. Please stay there for a moment. There is the speakers list, and there will be a couple of questions. Councillor Gale?
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you, Mr. Hummel. When was the last time you appeared here to speak?
12 years ago? 12?
Okay, so you're not a regular speaker here, no. And I saw that people didn't want you to talk, and I see the emotion in what you say. To use language like I use, I understand it very well. I have a few questions, and I can do the simple math on, if you go to that picture slide, please, the property. Just, you said there were 3 acres and there was 900 and some odd thousand dollars. Simple math, probably 700,000 or less than that, according to what you say, more. So there's $2 million, give or take, there. That's, if what you're saying is correct, is wasted. Do you feel this whole process has been open and transparent?
No, I don't think so, because just trying to get an idea of what they paid for this, I don't know what this property actually is. What was the property that the developer had to give? We have to give 5% of our land area to the community. The community wants to buy additional land, excess land. They can do so. They can purchase that from the developer at fair market value. But we don't know what land was given. We don't know where the excess land was. Was a road included? Because there's a road that's been built there, which I also question. Why would the town build a road when, as a developer, that's my job to do? I build it to your specifications, and I give it to you. Now, if you want to build it wider or you want to build it fancier, that's your nickel. But the actual road and the land for that road comes from my genes, not from the taxpayers. And that's my concern, Councillor.
Okay.
Through you,
with what,
Chair.
I'm sorry, through you, Chair.
Yeah.
With what you explained there, do you feel that the town's exercised appropriate due diligence with respect to the issuing of the credits to a local builder?
I don't know, because you can't see what happened. There's no transparency here, so I don't know how this transaction came about. And that's what I find somewhat confusing. I've never heard of such a thing, because basically you are creating currency to purchase something. but currency that's meant to go for somewhere else. So I've never seen this before. I've never heard that private enterprise can sell public document, not a document, but they're actually selling something that belongs to the public. This is the taxpayers' sidewalks, their sewers. How do you take those, put them on a piece of paper, and hand them to someone and buy something? I mean, you could theoretically buy a Ferrari. Yeah, maybe they bought a piece of parkland, but I'm not sure that that makes it any better.
Okay, and still through you, Chair. Regarding the requirements for the regional development charges, do you know of anyone else who uses escalating parkland fees in Niagara?
No, you can't use escalating parkland fees. The Act specifically doesn't allow you to do that. So basically the way it works is when you pay your parkland dedication fee, when the plan of subdivision is approved, the plan of subdivision goes into effect, the first lot sets the value of the park dedication fees. You can't escalate them. I mean, most municipalities own bylaws, and I think even Pelham's bylaw doesn't specifically states you can't do that. And certainly the Municipal Act says you can't do that. So certainly municipalities have adopted the stringent rules that the Ontario Municipal Act puts forth. And in this case, Pelham, I'm 99% sure, has the exact same bylaw that says the parkland dedication fee is based on the value of the first lot sold in a development. You can't escalate them.
Okay, my last question, Chair, through you. Since I've been here, there's been a lot of things investigated. We're going things like this, things that embarrass us, things that might be turned out to be perfect. I don't know. And that. But I was the one that seconded the motion by Councillor Barrick on the Pelham items and that, and I won't profess to have the same knowledge as Councillor Barrick. He researched it and that. Is he on the right road, do you feel?
When someone buys a piece of property in the middle of nowhere for more money than I've ever seen any parts of land, I mean, you can buy land downtown Toronto for that kind of money. $928,000 an acre for nothing. I bought the property next door, right next door, that abuts this piece of property a year and a half later, 6 months ago, and I paid $152,000 an acre. Somebody want to buy my land for $900? It's for sale. I'll sell everything I've got. It doesn't make any sense. Riverview, the river subdivision from Branscombe, it's finished now. You can buy 9 lots, fully serviced, roads, sewers, water, hydro, cable TV, everything, streetlights, ready to build on. You can buy 9 of those lots, which equal 1 acre, and you can't get to $900,000. Sorry, they're $100,000 a piece. That's what River Realty sold them for. Okay. Wholesale, by the way.
Through you, Chair, you used the word stinks. That's the type of words I used when I was doing the MTO, going against the MTO and things like this, and it's frustrating as hell because yes, you don't seem to get anywhere. So you're looking at us as an appeal type system to look into this as we are doing. I would take it that's your cause for being here.
Well, Councillor, through you, Mr. Chair, the challenge here is as taxpayers, we're all responsible for this. And I realize the municipality pays its own debts back, but it's the region that borrows the money. The region that's, in a sense, what I said earlier, co-signs the loan. If Fonthill can't pay, I'm in Niagara Lake, I get to pay because we decided to take care of our budget and we decided to live within our means, and someone else decides they're going to pay 5, 10 times what a piece of property is worth. Why would you do that? It makes absolutely no business sense, logical sense. It's why I use the terms, it appears to be a corrupted process. How do you get to that number? That's my problem, sir.
I thank you for your presentation. I hope you're 100% wrong, but I think
I hope so too.
Into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quirk?
Thank you, Chair. This issue was before us at audit, and Councillor Augustine and Town of Pelham staff had undertaken to provide some additional information through the public and to audit. So at this point, I'd like to make the unusual motion to receive this information and refer it to the September 8th audit meeting at this time to save further discussion tonight.
Is there a seconder for your referral? Councillor, can't see your face. Rigby, thank you. It's a referral. You can only ask about timing.
Yeah. So is the resolution or referral anything that has to do with the audit or just this specific presentation?
Councillor Quirk?
Sorry, through you, Chair, to Councillor Barrick, my intention was to receive this information and refer that to the September, whatever the date is, I'm sorry, 12th, we'll confirm it, to the September audit meeting at this time. I know there's some other correspondence that was added to the agenda. I haven't had a chance to review that, but if that is appropriate too, we can refer that to there. Sorry, Councillor Augustine is asking for a friendly amendment to a referral motion that we include all the correspondence that has been incorporated into this thing and refer it to the September audit meeting.
Refer it, all the correspondence related to this initiative to the audit committee. Okay. I'll use the buttons. Please prepare to vote. Okay, reset everything. Are we good? All right. Recorded vote is requested.
The vote is open.
Mr. Chair, on a point of order.
What's out of order? Hold the vote.
Oh, I'm just trying to sort this out. There's a list of individuals who want to ask questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Not yet.
My
A
question
little
is,
more respect, please. I understand there are
forget it,
people that want to
forget it.
ask questions, and there will be opportunity, Councillor D'Angelo, to have a fulsome discussion about it when it comes back. So we will, perhaps cooler heads at that time, we'll be able to have a fulsome discussion. So please start the vote again.
The vote is open.
Okay, and that carries. Thank you, Mr. Hummel, for your presentation today, and that will reappear at the audit committee in the fall. I don't know
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. Is the audit committee that's open to the public?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to adoption of the minutes. I'm going to turn to Councillor Beatty. Councillor Beatty for the adoption of the council minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Burrows. The minutes CL 08-2017, being the open session minutes of the Regional Council meeting held on Thursday, June 8th, 2017, be adopted.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Under correspondence, I'll turn to Councillor Luciani for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hodgson, that the items to be received and or referred be dealt with as noted in
Councillor,
Councillor,
my error. The clerk has advised me that we've already referred this item to the fall to,
okay.
So we'll get you to say it then. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, Councillor Redekop is not here. Has anybody picked up the PDS 30? Councillor Hudson?
Yeah, thank you. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Augustine, that report PDS 30, 2017, dated June 29, 2017, respecting Regional Smarter Niagara Incentives Program eligibility for revised Fort Erie Community Improvement Plan area, be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Thank you. Councillor, questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving to committee reports. The procedural bylaw, I'll turn to Councillor Quirk for the procedural bylaw committee minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Maloney, that the open session minutes of the following procedural bylaw review committee meetings be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved. Minutes PBLRC 05 2017, Tuesday, June 6th. Minutes PBLRC 06 2017, June 19th. Minutes PBLRC 07 2017, Tuesday, June 27th. And if I could just speak to them for 1 second, Chair?
Sure.
I just wanted to let Council know that the Procedural Bylaw Committee has been very busy meeting repeatedly. At the moment, the recommendation that has come forward is the approval of the appointment of our new Integrity Commissioner that was included in the minutes of Tuesday, June 27th. So if anyone has any questions to that, other than that, it's just the work that we've been doing as a committee to draft the new procedural bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Beatty?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question with regard to a former meeting of the Procedural Bylaw Committee that dealing with the Code of Conduct. For whatever reason, either I missed or I wasn't made aware of that meeting, found out about it late in the day, and came in and saw that the report that basically had been prepared by the Integrity Commissioner for discussion on Code of Conduct was significantly revised, rewritten by two councillors. Okay, went very diligently through that. My question to you, sir, is with our upcoming business planning, are we going to go back to the original source document as a starting point for council to be aware? Or are we going to go to the fully redlined revised document?
So I believe the document that's before us is the document that came from Procedural Bylaw Committee, which is the modified document. It was modified by several of the members of Procedural Bylaw Committee. So that's the document we're going to see on July the 6th.
I would recommend, Chair, that all council be given a copy of Mr. Mascaren's original report and to go through that in some detail. I think it's important to know that in context with the proposed numerous revisions proposed by the two councillors. I think we need to know the full story, and in particular, we've paid for that in terms of the Integrity Commissioner looking for his expert advice. I think we should at least be aware of what that advice was before we go to the alternative.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no more speakers, I'll call the question. Yes?
Mr. Chair, I do have some questions, or actually, instead of asking them here, I wonder if I can ask them at the July 6th meeting. So what I'd like to do is separate and refer the minutes and the approval of the Tuesday, July 27th meeting, June 27th, thank you, June 27th meeting to next week. And the reason, Mr. Chair, is because I don't think it's that time sensitive, and that the recommendations that were to us were given just moments, really less than 12 hours before the committee meeting. And I think it's important for council to take a look at that. So that's an addendum, I think, for tonight's meeting. And so we don't want to have something that didn't have a lot of time then, didn't have a lot of time now. So if we can just refer that section to next week's meeting and deal with it there. That's my motion. I don't know if Tony will second
Chair,
that.
if I may, sorry.
There's really no debate on a referral.
I have three separate motions if we'd like to do them separately, because it's one big motion that the clerks were kind enough to put together, but they did give me the option to do each minute individually, so we can do that and do two, accept two, and refer one. That would be, got all sorts of paper today.
Okay, so why don't we take care of the June 6th and the June 19th first?
Thank you, Mr.
I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? And that's carried. So now the June 27th remains on the floor, and the question is to refer that to July 6th. Councillor Quirk?
Second
Okay.
referral.
There's no debate. We've got the timing. Councillor Timms, did you?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just a little confused about how we disposed of the request from Councillor Beatty about the Code of Conduct report from Mr. Mascaren. So forgive me, I'm being a little confused about what subject we're on at the moment. The motion on the screen doesn't reflect what we're voting on at the moment because it got split.
Yeah.
And we're referring something.
Okay,
so
let me make it clear for you. We're referring Tuesday, June the 27th minutes from the Procedural Bylaw Committee to the July 6th discussion.
All right, do those minutes include the discussion of the Code of Conduct?
No.
Okay, thank you, that clarifies. Then the second question I had was, how did we deal with Councillor Beatty's request?
Who's taken a staff direction?
Well, I've had experience with staff direction. So I'd like to know that that's noted in the minutes as a staff direction and that we will be provided.
We're actually dealing with a referral right now, so you're talking about something different. So can we deal with the referral?
Yeah.
Okay, let's deal with the referral. Let me call the question on the referral of the minutes of June 27th. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Now, Councillor Timms, concern, I'll turn to the clerk.
I was actually surprised that
Through
they
the
were
chair,
on
so
today.
our normal practice with circulating recommendations from committee is to attach all of the agenda items that were circulated with the agenda package, which means that the original documents put forward by Mr. Mascarin will be attached to the agenda package for the special council meeting. It will also include, appended to a memo that I've prepared, a consolidated version of all of the changes that were made at committee to those code of conduct documents.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that helps. So that means for the July 6th meeting, we will have Mr. Mascarin's original report. We'll have the adjustments that Councillor Quirk and Councillor Volpatti put together as a proposal for the revisions. And when would that come out to us?
So I'm gonna take exception to what you just said, because quite frankly, there was more members of the procedural bylaw committee that made comments that were incorporated. So instead of identifying specific individuals that made specific comments, let's suggest that the revised version and the original version, if we can just keep it to that language, I think it makes more sense.
That's fine by me. I'm
Perfect.
quite happy to hear that. So the answer is all of this will come out to us by Tuesday or something? Because this is Thursday already.
Yeah.
It's going to come out to us tomorrow? That'd be great. Except staff is not working here tomorrow.
So the one thing I do want to get clear on, we have just referred those minutes to that meeting. It is a special council meeting that
yeah, it is at 6:30.
Thank you, Councillor.
So did you get the clarification? I'm clear then? We're going to get all this information Tuesday?
Monday.
Excellent.
Going to exceed your expectations. I'm going to turn to Councillor Quirk for the audit committee.
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Maloney, that correspondence item CLC 71, 2017, oh no, I apologize, that's been referred to all. I have a motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Maloney, that report AC 03, 2017, being the open session minutes of the audit committee meeting held on Monday, June 12th, 2017, be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was interested in item 5.2 in that agenda. It's on page 7.
Let me get to it.
I think it is the motion where the audit committee is making a recommendation to council that the regional taxpayer affordability guidelines be reaffirmed. And effectively, the audit committee is making a recommendation on budget committee business, and I didn't think that was the audit committee's jurisdiction.
Okay, which one is it? So you're talking about 5.1?
I think so.
Minute item 5.1?
It's on, okay. It was moved by Councillor Volpatti, seconded by Councillor Barrett. And that would be deferred to audit committee meeting. And then audit committee has a recommendation confirming the 2% and the guidelines and all that kind of business that I thought was.
So are you talking about the deferred, the motion that was deferred? Yes or no?
No. I'll start with a no and we'll figure it out in a minute.
Okay. Start with the title of it and what the number is.
Just a second.
Is it what's on the screen?
Okay. So the taxpayer affordability be deferred to the next audit committee meeting.
Is that what you're talking about?
That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
So my question is, why is it the business of the audit committee? Why is it, and simple as that? This reaffirming our guidance and affordability is the business of the committee of the whole budget, not audit. I didn't think that was in the mandate of audit. So my question is, what's it doing in audit? And the recommendation from that committee is just a recommendation, I understand that, but it's not the business of audit.
Well, I guess they'll figure that out when it gets to audit, because it's been deferred to audit, the audit meeting, and we can deal with it at that point.
So the committee of the whole, budget committee of the whole referred that, that motion to the audit committee
Sure.
by a vote of this council in committee of the whole.
Clerk would like to speak to
Yes or
that.
no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Through the chair, council will recall that Councillor Barrick had brought forward a motion on regional taxpayer affordability guidelines. That was brought to a meeting of regional council. At regional council, that motion was referred to the audit committee to deal with. And this is a result of the audit committee considering that motion. And at the end of their deliberations, it was deferred to the continued consideration of that motion was deferred to the next audit committee. What you see here is we have captured what the end result of the committee's work on that motion was, which is the 3 points there. So that entire motion is going to be considered at the next audit committee meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, I'll call the question on that, on the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Thank you. Turn to Councillor Maves for the Public Works Committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rigby, that report PWC 08-2017, being the open session minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting held on Tuesday, June 20th, 2017, be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Councillor Quirk.
Chair, if I can have council's indulgement, I'm just trying to find the item number that I'd like to raise and discuss, if I could, please. It's item 5.5 of the minutes. It's the intermunicipal transit phase 2 update, and it talks to the approvals of the various members of the transition steering committee. If I can lift it, speak to it at this point?
Yes, please.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. If you recall, this was passed at Public Works on last week, yes. And right immediately after that, the IMT working group did meet, and there was some discussion as to the actual makeup of the committee, and I'm not sure if it would be council's decision to more accurately represent what came out of the IMT meeting. The recommendation for the steering committee looks to have 2 members from St. Catharines, 2 members from Welland, and 2 members from the other one, Niagara Falls. Thank you. Sorry. My point was that it didn't specifically say that it was to be the mayor and his designate and a second person. So the mayor or his designate and a second person. It was to reserve those spots for the mayor or his or her designate and a second local councillor being appointed, or a representative appointed by the local municipality. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that when it goes forward, that there's no surprise, or if we want to change that right now. And I think the other issue that was not specific, which is specific to us, is that the 4 regional council members it was understood that it would be the chair and 3 others, and it's not specifically spelled out in those terms of reference. If it's the council's will that we accept that as sort of the direction that came out of IMT, then that's one thing. If we need to codify it and lift and amend that to make sure those are in the terms of reference, I'm also happy to make that motion as well.
I think it would be in order if that was your will to go ahead and lift that and make those changes, if that's what's requested. So the request is on 5.52, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, and Welland to select 2. I understand what you're suggesting is one to be the mayor of the city and the other to be a designate?
Sorry, it would be the mayor or his designate and a second member. So there would be the mayor. So if the mayor doesn't choose to sit on the committee, they could send their designate, but that wouldn't use up their 2 spots, right? Okay. There would be the mayor. He could send a designate if he wanted to, if he didn't want to sit on the committee. And the same with yourself, Chair, if you chose not to be the representative on that committee, that you could send your designate, and there would still be 3 other regional councillors. Okay, does everybody understand the amendment? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Sorry? Did you amendment?
On the amendment,
the clerk
I'm
is working on the
sorry, I
amendment.
missed where this was discussed, because I don't recall that being discussed at Public Works, that we name mayors and the chair. I don't have a problem with it, but I don't recall us talking about that.
It was not. It was not, and it's being discussed now. This is the first time it's on the floor. Yes.
I'm not sure we should be dictating to the municipalities, frankly, that it should be their mayor or certainly a councillor, and I'm not positive that we should be doing that. I believe that if this council is to appoint 4 people, we should have the option of appointing the the chair. But I'm not sure I agree with saying that to the municipalities that we want your mayor.
The wording was mayor or designate.
I understand that, but we're saying to them, it must be the mayor, unless you want to change it.
Councilor Quirk?
Sorry, if I may, Councilor Rigby's right, this was not discussed at Public Works. It was passed at Public Works with the terms of reference. Item 5.5 talks, number 2, Councilor Niagara, point 2 on item 5.5 speaks to the 2 members of their respective councils as members. After Public Works, there was the IMT working group meets after Public Works, and there were some discussions whether that should be clarified and or codified in the terms of reference. We're the first council, I think, that's seeing this and improving it at this stage. So what I'm doing, my amendment is basically bringing back sort of the discussions from steering committee that were had, putting it back in terms of reference before we recognize that. And I will say that the mayors were at the steering committee, so we understand what that was about.
I'm just going to, I'm going to turn to our Public Works Commissioner. Would you like to speak before or after?
I don't mind after or before.
Okay, I think he wants to clarify a couple more points.
Thank you, Chair. It was really just to reinforce what we just said. This was a discussion that took place with one of the mayors and 3 of the CAOs. That was the flavor of the discussion or the intent, and that's what's being conveyed by Councillor Quirk.
Councillor Rigby?
To clarify, it was the meeting of that committee with the commissioners from the transit commissions, et cetera.
No, the CAOs and the mayors were there.
The CAOs and the mayors.
Yes.
If that's a recommendation, I'll stand down.
Yeah, put it up. Yeah, please. Okay, we're going to put it on the screen just so we can see the amendment. That the report be forwarded to councils from Niagara to select their mayor or designate and councils.
So, yes, if I may, to this motion, if I may, the actual, and again, I keep calling this a transition working group because this is sort of the interim transition that's going to be discussing the MOU and moving it forward. The idea being that this committee would actually have 4 members of regional council, and it would have 6 members from the 3 local councils. So what we're doing is, if you can read this item, it says that regional council select 4 members of council to sit on the Intermunicipal Transit Steering Committee. That the second point, which we're just talking about amended, is that this report forwarded to the councils of Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, and Welland. So we're actually forwarding this report after we do this and approve it today. And what the amendment that I'm proposing, and I think the staff has captured it appropriately on number 2, is that it would be the mayor or his designate. I'm using his because they're all 3 male mayors at the moment. His designate, and a second councillor that would be selected by the local council.
For parallel uses, say
So that's what we're trying to just make sure that there was, it is essentially putting the heads of council on this committee, the steering committee. And then what we've captured in the first amendment, which is what I was speaking to, was that the intention was that the regional chair or designate and 3 members of council.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I apologize.
Yeah, so
it's a little bit convoluted, and I'm sorry to do it in this fashion. It's just IMT meant after Public Works last week.
So we've got it on the screen as requested. Are there any more discussion to the amendment? Councilor Burrows?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. The motion I saw a minute ago is quite different than this, and I thought it was great. But obviously you're on it, and now it's your designate?
Or,
and then,
yeah, or designate, myself or my designate.
Yeah, and then 3 members of our council?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no more speakers to the amendment, I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. Thank you very much. Now for the balance of the Public Works minutes, I see Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to draw attention to item 7.5, which is near and dear to Councillor Burrows and my hearts. That's a concession 6 Mewburn Road Bridge and that. And I bring that up because we discussed it today at Police Services Board and you had some information on it, but also there was an accident at the QEW in Glendale 2 days ago in the morning, a serious accident that backed up all the traffic going into Niagara on the Lake. There's also a concert on July 2nd, I believe it's Blue Rodeo, and that will back up everything there again. All I'm saying here is, Chair, you were kind enough at Police Service Board, which you and I both sit on, to say that it's in the process of this bridge being fixed. And I know in this report it says from Commissioner Tripp that it will be spoken to on July 11th, I believe it is, on the Concession 6 improvements. But I'm going to be a real pain in the neck on this one for the next 6 months to a year on getting this done because it's been 3 years and we don't have a date. No one gives me dates. And you know how I can be a pain in the neck, Gary. So this, okay, good. I've been here 3 years or whatever. So all I'm saying is, it's not warning, it's just that I appreciate your information on it, sir, and the report from Commissioner Tripp, but I just need a date on it when it's happening. It's not a regional responsibility, but sure.
Okay, there is no action in the minutes?
Well, July 11th, the report comes. I'm not looking for response right now. I'm looking for information on July 11th with dates.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Maves?
That's okay. What I want to discuss has gone through.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be appropriate for us this evening to nominate and then vote or appoint?
Yes, right after the minutes.
Okay.
Right after we adopt the minutes, we're planning on doing that.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification for anybody that was looking at a previous version of the agenda for that meeting, there was an item that was omitted because of confusion between discussions and motions. The minutes from the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee were to come to Public Works. I had asked at the previous council meeting that one item in that recommendation be deferred so that our community would have a chance to deal with it.
Yep.
That didn't get translated in the motion, so all of the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee minutes from their last or previous meeting were not dealt with at this Public Works meeting. In talking to the commissioner, that recommendation or the information that was presented and recommended from the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee is being forwarded to the municipality. We do have a meeting of our Public Works on July the 12th and a meeting of council on July the 17th. So hopefully we'll be able to have an opportunity to review that recommendation, the impact of that recommendation, whether it is supported by the municipality or not, and then make our motion known to this Public Works Committee when it does come back so that Commissioner Tripp can move on with his master plan.
Let me make sure that Commissioner has it straight. Everything okay?
Yes, Chair, clear.
Okay. All right, thank you. Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And item 7.8 on the Public Works minutes is Highway 55 in Niagara on the Lake. And as we all know, those of us that use it, it is behind schedule. They've had difficulties. It's starting to look great. But this is one of the biggest weekends in the entire summer. I'm sure you'll be at Blue Rodeo and all the other things going on. So is there any way we can arrange that all day tomorrow they just get the road working and no more pillars and posts and everything else? Just get it so that for this weekend we're going to be in good shape.
The Commissioner is asking if we can leave it with him to take under his wing.
And if it doesn't happen, we've left it with him.
We'll have chicken wings. Okay, now for the balance of the minutes, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. Thank you. Did anybody pick up Councillor Joyner's, Councillor Easton? So, yes, before you do, we are doing the selection process, and Madam Clerk, could you please, well, let me just preface a little bit what we were trying to do here. At the IMT meeting that I was part of, we tried to find an equitable system that would work for everybody and try and keep, in particular, the communities that do not have transit currently in their communities, or at least don't have their own transit in their communities, involved and engaged in the process. We had specific requests from a number of different people to want to sit on this committee, And as a committee, we put our minds to a couple of things. One is that from the west in Grimsby, we have Councillor Quirk as the chair of the Transportation Steering Committee and has been sitting on IMT from start to finish. Seemed to be a natural fit. We were reticent to put a slate forward because of the optics of what that looks like, but I'm just going to run through the thought process. Fort Erie, being the furthest east, has asked to be included. Councillor Nunziata has suggested no, he does not want to be part of that. But Councillor, sorry? Okay, Councillor Redekop did, but go ahead.
Well, he's not here right now, so I don't want that to preclude Councillor Redekop from being on the committee.
It would not preclude Councillor Redekop from being on the committee.
I was going to nominate Councillor Nunziata.
Okay, I guess the point I'm trying to make at this point is that it was somebody from the far east that we wanted to get, the furthest east in Niagara anyways, and then somebody from central and south. Councillor Beatty acknowledged that he would be interested in participating from Welland to represent central and south. And so I'll just put that in your Pelham and the south. We only have 3 positions, so we have to spread our area. So with that said, I'll call for nominations, and Councillor Maves.
Mentioned.
You'll nominate the 3 I just mentioned, which is Councillor Quirk, Councillor Beatty, and I'm not sure about Fort Erie.
Redekop.
Councillor Nunziata.
I would like to nominate Mayor Redekop.
Right, that's what I was doing.
And I'll second
Who followed that one?
Yeah, Mayor Redekop, because he
Councillor
said-
Redekop?
He said that he would defer to Mayor Redekop if he was here, but he's not here, but it doesn't matter, I can still nominate Mayor
Okay,
Redekop.
got it. You'll let your name stand and defer to Councillor Redekop should it fail. Okay, are there further nominations? I'll ask for a motion to close nominations. Councillor Dart, Councillor Burrows, all those in favor? That's carried. Congratulations, you've just adopted a lot of work.
That's true.
Thank you. Moving on, Councillor Easton, have you got the Public Health and Social Services?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I have a motion moved by myself and Councillor Marshall that report PHSSC 07-2017 being the open session minutes of the Public Health and Social Services Committee meeting held on Tuesday, June 20th, 2017 be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Barrick?
Thank you, Chair. Point 4.1 in the minutes, it speaks to Mr. Seuss, resident City Welland. He appeared before the committee to present a motion, and then it says there that the motion would be circulated to all members of Regional Council in the weekly correspondence distribution. So the gentleman was here earlier asking if it was actually on the agenda, so I think there was maybe a miscommunication with Mr. Seuss in terms of managing expectations. I'm wondering if we can put that item on either the next Public Health Committee agenda, and if the council can't do that, then put it on the next council agenda as correspondence.
I'm going to turn to Dr. Yeager for comments.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I might, my understanding is that the council's request is that it be placed on as correspondence. Do you wish me to speak to that process or to the content of the motion?
Let me be clear, was it correspondence, Councillor?
Yes, as correspondence, yes.
Thank you. I think we're okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you put that forward as a motion, Councillor Barrick? Did you put that forward as a motion or just a request?
What would you like? If it's
a request is
direction or-
fine by me.
Okay, request is fine. Okay.
Thank you. Now to the balance of the Public Health minutes and Social Services minutes. Seeing no speakers, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Barrick for Corporate Services.
Thank you, Chair. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nunziata, that report CSE 8/2017 being the open and closed session minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Thank you. Councillor Volpatti?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to remind members of the Development Charges Committee that we do have a meeting on Tuesday, July 4th at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
I've had 2 meetings where we have not achieved quorum. This is a very important issue. I expect that those members who signed up to be on this committee will be there on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, be here on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, or have a very good reason why they're not here,
Or what?
or else.
Got it.
Thank you. It's a very important topic.
Got it.
I know we have regrets from one person who cannot be here, but otherwise, it's an or else.
Great. Thank you very much. Seeing no more speakers, I'll call the question on the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Thank you. Now I'll turn to Councillor Volpatti for Planning and Economic Development.
Thank you, Chair. Moved by me and seconded by Councillor Nunziata that report PEDC 04-2017 being the open session minutes of the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting held on Wednesday, June 21, 2017 be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked that I received some information. I asked it be reflected in the minutes. I don't see it now with respect to the process and agricultural uses. Maybe I've missed it, but I asked specifically that my request be in the minutes.
Okay, let me find out what happened to that. Commissioner is saying he might think it's in the minutes, but I'll ask him to point it out. Okay, thank you. Councillor Augustine?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at the Planning Committee, so just for 30 seconds, I'd like to highlight the item, and this is really as a result of Councillor Beatty's work, and maybe he was going to speak to it, he is, but I'll be very short. I just really appreciate Councillor Beatty's work on the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the planning staff here. I think Town of Pelham might be considering what's recommended in the report pending the work that Councillor Beatty is doing with the Niagara Escarpment Commission on the Fawn Hill Cane. As Council knows, it's an extremely important geographical feature in the region and in the town, and it's very important that it is protected for future generations. So just wanted to highlight that, and I appreciate Councillor Beatty. I'm sure is going to speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burrows?
My question's been answered.
Thank you. Councillor Beatty?
Yes, thank you. And to clarify, I would like to have noted in the minutes that I had significant concerns with the report from the Escarpment Commission, the way it was worded. I stated that I voiced that at the last Escarpment Commission meeting, that they had originally set out 6 criteria to determine whether or not it should be considered. That was done independently for the coordinated review. They determined at that point in time that only 2 of the 6 criteria were met. The mayor and staff of Pelham and region reviewed that and said no, it was 4 of the 6. The NEC staff has not responded to that, and my request was supported unanimously by the commission members that the next meeting they in fact go through, have a meeting with the staff of the region and town, review the 4 stated areas of concern, and verify that either will accept those 4 for future. The decision by staff to not move forward was that those 6 criteria were made only for the coordinated review. My point is that on the record, no matter how far down in future we go, other developers are going to say only 2, so therefore you don't qualify. So we've asked for that clarification. As I say, it was supported unanimously at the last Escarpment Commission meeting here in St. Catharines.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, through you, maybe ask Commissioner regarding the report on the Greenbelt itself and the Greenbelt review.
Yes.
Whether or not, and I haven't read all of the detail here, but probably the least productive and most welcome meeting I've ever had with ministers was with the Minister of Agriculture. And it didn't really seem that they were interested in any input from anybody, and they were suggesting that the mapping wasn't going to change and tender fruit land was off the market altogether. We had actually put forward an independent ag expert report on the quality of soils and land in the west end of Grimsby. I think the commissioner has seen that. It made no sense for them just to not make any move whatsoever. So I know part of it was in the escarpment plan, and we weren't really pleased with their review of it either. But in the review that has come and made part of this report, is there anything in the legislative part of it versus the mapping part of it that will make sense out of some of this specialty crop land that has been fallow for 70 years?
Let me get an answer, a response on that. Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Bentley is correct in terms of his understanding of the green belt mapping and policies, which there's a direct preclusion, and we talked about this at Planning Committee, there's a direct preclusion to the conversion of tender fruit lands to good general agriculture. There's no ability to allow tender fruit lands to be considered for towns and villages or any kind of other use other than the growing of tender fruit and related value-added production. I have confirmed that further with ministry staff, where they have reinforced the fact that tender fruit designation trumps everything. It trumps complete communities, it trumps brownfields, it trumps transit-oriented development. And so we continue to assert our concern with respect to that. They have told me that before the end of the year, we will be receiving new agricultural mapping. But I have asked them directly whether there will be any changes to the tender fruit mapping in the Grimsby area, and they've said that they don't anticipate that. They've also said that at this point in time, it's the position of the government that no changes be permitted to the tender fruit designated agricultural lands across the province, or at least the lands affected by the growth plan and the Greenbelt plan. So I think, getting back to your question, the next opportunity for comment would be when they release the agricultural mapping.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, because that's one of the most frustrating pieces of it. We'd actually provided, and they have not done any agricultural mapping since the 70s, I don't believe, and they're actually using the outdated mapping that the region had. Even though we provided them with some, we said, well, at least we can start your process. What's the timing of bringing the quality of soils and agricultural viability up to date? And it's over the next 10 years somewhere, but Minister Leal didn't seem to be too enthused about it, and it doesn't sound like they're going to be doing any more work either, and that was why I wanted to raise it. What is the region looking to do? Because we're not the only municipality that has fallow lands that have been sitting for more than 50 years. They are not tender fruit lands. We actually have fully developed communities in between fallow properties that have been there for 50 to 70 years. They will not change the designation. That makes no sense. So what do we do other than sit and wait and hope for a change in government or somebody to come to their senses? Because we've actually had an expert look at our portion of it and he said, just you do your job and tell us whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. We provided the ministry with that report and they didn't really seem to care. And they don't really want any information. So we're at a loss. The region's going to be at a loss as well. And so I was just sort of looking for what our next steps might be. Thank you.
And I certainly understand your frustration. I was with you in Grimsby when we entertained David Crombie for a meeting to talk about the planning process. And I know there's a lot of frustration from many members of the region as the outcome of that process. So thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So if I may, just to close on that, just so that everyone is, so that we're crystal clear, OMAFRA will be preparing new mapping that they're sort of couching as a systems approach to the agricultural viability of farming, including tender fruit. They have committed to consultation once they prepare that draft mapping. That will be our next window of opportunity to engage the province later this year. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that because, like I said, we took probably the second best expert in the province to do our work. So hopefully they will use that as a stepping stone or a start anyway, because he did recognize there are some, and that's what we wanted. You identify the ones that are critical, we'll protect them. The ones that aren't, and the ones that have water and sewer and surveys and schools and churches already built, they make no sense. But it was the Ministry of Agriculture that was the stumbling block, not the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. They were more than receptive to logic and actually seemed to be working with us to narrow down a focus, even with the GO stations in the Greenbelt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they need to do something, and they were basically in denial, and that's a frustrating part.
Yeah. Just to know, transportation is exempt, but perhaps it's one of those initiatives that we want to deal with at AMO. Okay, thank you. Seeing no more speakers, I'll call a question on the minutes. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that carries. Thank you. There's no CIO reports this evening. There are no motions. Excuse me. There are no motions, and under other business, there's an announcement about Highway 55.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just in response to the question that came up at Public Works Committee meeting minutes, the work activity was shut down at 2 this afternoon. There'll be nothing on Friday or Monday. There'll be limited restrictions just to keep things safe, but full traffic through.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Councillor Gale, then Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to credit the clerk. We've had another month with no fistfights and that of changing seats. And I guess I'm the one to blame or credit for that. I know there's no credit for this, but just a few comments on this. It's obvious that George and Debbie don't have much friendship here. And I want to credit the clerk for allowing Tim to have people beside him that allow him to push buttons. And the wish of Councillor Augustine, thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Augustine one day will get to see this council from another view. He's only been in this row for the whole time, although we're best buds now. So thank you, everybody, for moving around, and I still think it's a good idea that we did. Oh, don't give me that. Thanks.
Councillor Gale, that's not an announcement, so let's move on. Councillor Rigby?
Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to announce that I've invited you all to the meeting next, whatever.
July 4th.
Whatever
Regional Development
it is.
Task Force?
Eh?
Regional Development Charges Task Force?
Development Charges meeting. I merely went in, punched it into my data, and apparently I've sent you all an invitation. So it still has not been fixed.
Well, again, that's not an announcement, but thank you for the information. Councillor D'Angela?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to announce, I know you didn't bring it up in your opening remarks because of time limit, but the NRH, we had our groundbreaking ceremony.
Yeah, I did. Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
85 new units of affordable housing are now underway, and the construction is starting. So this is a great news, and it was great to have the ministry there and the different levels of government representation. This is an exciting day, not only for St. Catharines, who is getting the building, but for all of Niagara, because we're starting to move forward to deal with one of our priorities of reducing the wait list and making sure we have more affordable housing out there. So this was a great start. It's the biggest build for Niagara Regional Housing and the first build for Niagara Regional Housing in 40 years in the city of St. Catharines. So it's a benefit to all. So again, congratulations.
Thank you for bringing that up. 1%, 1%. Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to acknowledge the retirement of Jeff McGuire, our chief. He's done a wonderful job for 5 years for all of us in Niagara, not only with his integrity, his honesty, but also his communication skills. And he will be sorely missed. I know the board will find another replacement. We always do. But I just wanted to acknowledge his retirement.
Thank you. It was acknowledged today during police board meeting. Councillor Gale, would you like to add anything to the retirement of the chief of police?
Other than integrity and class, this was his choice, and I can't add any more than that. I know I've read some other comments, but the chief was good for us. He was a good leader, and I know the other board put him in place and that, but I'm very pleased, and I wish him all the best in the future.
Now, the chair did get a motorcycle this year, and so did the chief, and we talked about riding together in the Ride for Dad, and he made it clear that he wanted to be in front of me and never let me ride in front of him, just in case I wiped out, he didn't want to run me over. So thank you for that. Councillor Valpatti?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I'm supposed to do this, but I'll try. Correspondence from AMO about a 1% addition to the HST to be dedicated to municipal infrastructure. Could we make sure that we respond to this by addressing it at AMO so that we support them in this endeavor, please?
Councillor Valpatti, that's not an announcement.
That's correct. It's not.
Councillor Nunziata?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to congratulate Mark Rickel as being appointed our new CAO at the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. After a very thorough and exhaustive search, the cream always rises to the top. So we're excited to have Mark welcome Christine, his wife, and his family to the new role as CAO at the NPCA.
Thank you. Councillor Luciani?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to invite everybody in the chamber to Thorold this coming weekend for 3 days of Blues on the Battlefield in Beaver Dance Park, Battle of Beaver Dance Park in downtown Thorold. It's from 2 to 10 o'clock daily, and you're going to see some of the best blues bands from all across North America.
Thank you, and I will be there.
And it's only $5 on Sunday.
Don't worry
and
about it.
Monday.
I can cover it. I just, we do have one item of business to go into closed session for, so we will need to do that. Please don't pack up your stuff yet. Under announcements, I want to make a comment, and it's not necessarily a positive comment, but it's a matter of fact. First of all, I want to thank everybody that's here today, because you're the ones that I'm not addressing this message to. Earlier today, we called a budget meeting, and we did not achieve quorum. Not a good news story. A lot of people took time out of their day, took time off their jobs, made an effort to be here, only to find out that the meeting would not take place. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, if you're going to be signing up for a committee, the expectation is that you are there. So please, if you're signed up for a committee, otherwise, please excuse yourself from the committee, get off the committee if you're not going to be showing up. It just hurts everybody else who makes the attempt to get there and tries to do the right thing to have the meeting continue, and it's frustrating when we all make our plans and we can't achieve quorum. So sorry to have to do that, but we need to be reminded that we are here to do a job. We need to make sure we get it done. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Burrows? Well, first of all, I'll ask, is there a reason to go into closed session? Does anybody need to go into closed session to discuss the item? Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, there is a closed session item that needs this council's direction. It is time sensitive, in my opinion. I know that our Mayor, Wayne Redekop, would want to be here to discuss it. I know he indicated to me that he would be here at 8:30. I think it's very important that this council hears from both myself and my colleague on this issue. So if we could push it back, maybe take care of business, and not go into closed session just yet.
We're at the end.
We're at the end.
So, motion to go into closed session. Councillor Burrows, Councillor Nunziata, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you.
Let's do it.
So if the audience will please excuse us, there's not a lot, so let's move right into closed session right away. We shouldn't need a lot of time to convert over.
Yeah. Let's take our time going to closed session right now.
Well, you know
Going to turn to Councillor Burrows. Councillor Burrows for the bylaws.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Beatty that bills 2017-51 to 2017-58 be now read and do pass.
Thank you very much. Councillor Volpatti.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to refer Bill 2017-55 to the September 12th Audit Committee meeting.
Is there a seconder for that?
Which one is that?
Councillor Bentley.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, makes sense.
Is everything in order what we just did?
It's 55, the cost of the construction of the Town of Pelham Community Center.
Okay, it's a question, it's been duly moved and seconded.
Sorry, through the chair.
Yes.
Through the chair, if this motion gets deferred, we'd have to go into closed session because there would be a matter of potential litigation. So I don't want to make comments in open session on that if we defer this bylaw.
Okay. Deferral or referral? Can we get through the balance of the bills? Okay. Any questions or comments on the balance of the bills other than 19.5 and 19.8, which is ratifying what we do tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. Motion to move into closed session. Councillor Volpatti, seconder. Councillor Timms. All those in favor, moving into closed session? That's carried. Okay, the clerks would like me to call that again. Motion to move into closed session. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Are we in closed session now? I don't think it's, thank you. Councillor Volpatti, have you withdrawn your referral motion? Thank you.
I have withdrawn it.
I'll ask for a motion to approve Bill 2017-55 and 2017-58. Councillor Rigby, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to speak very shortly about it.
Okay.
I think that what we learned in Cameron and also our process that we're going through with the town of Pelham is that it shows that we need to readdress what our relationships are with our municipalities, and I think that's something that we're going to have to address in the very near future as we go forward.
Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor?
Recorded vote, Chair.
Recorded vote is required. As requested. Please use the buttons.
The vote is open.
10 seconds. And that carries. Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.
Bylaw, don't we?
That, it was in there.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody have a happy long weekend and a happy 150th birthday to Canada.